All right, so welcome back to the Champ of Champions NFL tournament, the ultimate what if battle to determine the greatest Super Bowl champion of all time. Now that the regional final is complete, here's how today's video is going to break down. First, we're going to recap the regional final for each region. Then we're going to highlight the key plays, stats, and breakdown of each of those games. And then finally, we're going to preview the Final Four and the matchups that will set up the Champ of Champions final. So let's get right into the video. All right, so let's start with the North Final, and this is going to be the 0-2 Bucks taking on the 84 49ers. As you can see, the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they leaned on their signature recipe of defense, discipline, and timely offense to take down Joe Montana's high-powered 84 49ers 24-10 in the Champ of Champions tournament. And it basically started early with Brad Johnson. He was steady as ever. He was leading a sharp opening drive, and he capped it off with an 8-yard strike to Reggie Barlow. That basically put Tampa up 7-0. Later on, Martin Gramatica would hit a 29-yard field goal, making it 10-0 going into halftime. But before that, the Bucks defense controlled the first half. It was Derek Brooks and John Lynch. They basically set the tone with physical tackling, and then Rondé Barber added in a sack to frustrate Montana. The 49ers moved the ball, but couldn't really find the end zone. In the third quarter, Tampa delivered the dagger. They had Aaron Stecker. He broke loose for a 51-yard touchdown run, pushing the lead to 17-0. This had the Cotton Bowl crowd basically stunned because the 49ers were shut out through three quarters. San Francisco, they finally showed some life, though, in the fourth. Wershing drilled a 33-yard field goal, and then Derek Harmon electrified the stadium with a 36-yard touchdown sprint, cutting the deficit to 17-10. Momentum seemed to be shifting, but Brad Johnson never blinked. The veteran quarterback methodically marched Tampa down the field, converting big third downs and then sealing the game with a 3-yard touchdown toss to Ricky Dudley with under about 2 minutes left to play. So that drive put the game out of reach 24-10. Johnson finished with 170 yards and 2 touchdowns and no turnovers. That earned him player of the game honors. Also, Keyshawn Johnson and Keenan McCardle, they both combined for over 100 yards, while Michael Pittman, 85 rushing yards, helped control the tempo. Now, Montana, he threw for nearly 200 yards, with Freddie Solomon racking up about 91 of those, but the Bucks defense never let him break through with a score. So a costly fumble by Roger Craig deep in Tampa territory also swung momentum firmly toward the Buccaneers. But in the end, it was vintage Tampa Bay, efficient offense, a punishing defense, and no mistakes. So the 0-2 Bucks are moving on with a 24-10 statement win over one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history. Now let's move on to the West Final. It's going to be the 94 49ers versus the 69 Chiefs. Defense basically ruled the day here, right? The 69 Kansas City Chiefs basically stunned the 94 49ers 13-6 in a gritty, low-scoring battle. The first half was all about field goals. It was Steve Young. He marched San Francisco into range early, and then Doug Bryan connected from 41 yards to put the Niners up 3-0. But then Len Dawson, he answered with precision, setting up Jane Stannerud for a pair of kicks, one from 30 yards and then another from 20. And then Bryan added another 24-yarder late in the half that tied things up. So the games went into the break basically knotted up 6-6. The middle quarters were basically a grind. Both defenses dominated. Kansas City's Buck Buchanan and Bobby Bell, they harassed Steve Young, who was sacked 4 times and picked off once by Willie Lanier. On the other side now, Ricky Waters kept San Francisco alive with chunk plays, including a 32-yard run and then an 82-yard catch and run, earning him player of the game honors despite the loss. Finally, with just over 2 minutes left in regulation, Dawson engineered the drive of the night, right? Methodically working the ball downfield, he found tight end Fred Arbanos in the end zone for 3-yard touchdown, giving the Chiefs a 13-6 lead. San Francisco had one last chance in the game, but the Chiefs secondary tightened, and the Niners turned it over on downs, sealing the upset. So for Kansas City, Dawson finished with 211 yards and the game-winning touchdown, spreading the ball to Otis Taylor and Gloucester Richardson. So the Chiefs defense was the true hero in this one. They basically held Jerry Rice was only held to 34 yards in the air and limited Young scrambling. Also, his ability to run was basically nothing in this football game. But in the end, it was gritty, right? It was that old school Chiefs defense and clutch late execution that toppled the 49ers team loaded with Hall of Fame firepower. Final score here is 13-6. That KC team from 1969 will be moving on. All right, so let's jump to the East Final. This is going to be the 2014 New England Patriots taking on the 2013 Seattle Seahawks. Basically a rematch of that 2014 Super Bowl. This dynasty or these dynasties, Tom Brady's 2014 Patriots will be playing those Legion of Boom defenses, that is probably the best matchup that you're possibly going to see. And basically, from the opening drive, it was clear here that Seattle came to set the tone. Marshawn Lynch and Robert Turbin pounded the rock, and with just 9 seconds left in the first quarter, Turbin barreled in from 5 yards out for the game's opening score. And then from there, it was Russell Wilson went to work, right? He was finding Golden Tate for a 6 yard touchdown. That pushed the lead to a 14-3 going into the half. And then the momentum really swung in the third quarter. After forcing a Patriots punt, Seattle's special teams broke it open with a 74-yard punt return touchdown that electrified the stadium and gave Seahawks a commanding 21-3 advantage. But the Patriots wouldn't fold, right? Julian Edelman, he was named actually player of the game of this despite the loss. He sparked life with a 43-yard touchdown run, showing his versatility and cutting the lead to 21-10. And then Brady then marched New England into field goal range, and Steven Gostkowski knocked one through to make it 21-13. And then for a moment, it looked like the comeback was on. That's when Seattle's balance took over. Wilson kept the chains moving. Lynch and Turbin wore down the defense, and the kicker, Stephen Hoshka, he basically sealed the deal with 2 clutch field goals in the fourth, stretching the lead back out. So the final score here was 27-13 for Seattle. Statistically, the Seahawks dominated time of possession almost 34 minutes to New England's 26, while rushing over 200 yards as a team. So Wilson was efficient, completing 10 of 15 passes for 161 yards and a score, while the defense swarmed Brady, holding him under 200 passing yards and just 1 for 3 on fourth down tries. In the end, it was a classic Seahawks formula: run the ball, play suffocating defense, and let special teams deliver the dagger. And against a Brady-led Patriots squad, that's no small feat. They will be moving on to the Final Four. All right, so let's move on to the South Final, and that's going to be between the 2000 Baltimore Ravens versus the 1999 St. Louis Rams. And this matchup was billed as the irresistible force against the immovable object. It was the greatest show on turf, those Rams colliding with the 2000 Ravens with that historical defense. But from the opening whistle, it was Kurt Warner and company dictating the pace. Midway through the first quarter, Warner dropped a perfect strike to Chad Lewis for a 23-yard touchdown, and that was just the beginning. Jeff Wilkins added a pair of field goals, including a booming 50-yarder, giving St. Louis a 13-0 cushion before Baltimore could even settle in. The Ravens showed some fight in the second quarter. Matt Stover knocked through a 36-yard kick to get them on the board, but that would be their only points of the day. Against the defense anchored by Kevin Carter, London Fletcher, and Dre Bly, Dilford, he was under siege all afternoon. He was sacked 6 times, pressured relentlessly, and Baltimore's ground game never got rolling. Jamal Lewis held to just 30 yards on 19 carries. Meanwhile, the Rams didn't need fireworks. Warner was steady. He was 12 completions for 167 yards and the lone touchdown. Isaac Bruce and Isaiah Hakeem combined for chunk plays downfield, while Marshall Faulk he was kind of bottled up through the ground. He chipped in as a reliable safety valve through the air, though, and caught a touchdown via the pass. The difference maker, though, was Wilkins. The Rams kicker was flawless, drilling 5 field goals from 22, 38, 37, and then 2 bombs from 50 to slowly squeeze the life out of Baltimore. Final score here is 22-3. In the end, the Ravens defense, they played tough, but even they couldn't overcome an offense that kept finding ways to move the chains in a kicking game that capitalized on every single opportunity. The greatest show on turf proved just to be too precise and too efficient, and also just too balanced, handling Ray Lewis and the Ravens one of the rare beatdowns of this era. Okay, so now we've moved down to the Final Four in the Champ of Champs tournament, and the matchups couldn't be more different. First up, we're going to have those 0-2 Bucks taking on the 69 Kansas City Chiefs, and this is a battle of old school power defenses, right? Tampa's suffocating pass rush against Kansas City's AFL champs built on discipline and toughness. You can expect a grinded out clash here where one mistake could decide it all. Now, on the other side, it's the Flash versus Smash, right? The 13 Seattle Seahawks versus the 1999 St. Louis Rams. It's that Legion of Boom defense against the greatest show on turf. Can Seattle's physical secondary slow down Warner, Falk in that high-powered offense, or will St. Louis prove to be just too fast and too dynamic? 2 totally different styles, 4 iconic teams, and 1 prize on the line. Only 2 move on to the championship. And that wraps up the regional final recap. If you're still with us, you are a real one, but we're just getting started. Now's your moment to jump in. You can subscribe so you don't have to miss that Final Four preview. You can drop a like down below if you like this concept and want to see more sports covered in this format. Also, you can comment below who you think will win and take home the whole tournament. And hey, share this with a friend who gets into these hypothetical historical matchups because we'll be giving you more. In the next episode, we will give you the preview for the Final Four. So stay sharp, and we'll see you guys in the next one.